Stop me if you've heard this before. Back to Iraq. President Obama has authorized another 450 troops for Iraq. That's on top of the 3,000 that we already have there. The Americans will train and assist the Iraqis who are battling ISIS. They'll also try to rally and build up local tribal fighters. The Pentagon is also spending more weapons and equipment into the country. Also looking at increasing the American footprint by opening up several small bases near the front lines. And joining us now is Mike Lyons, military analyst, retired captain in the U.S. Army who served in Iraq. As always, Mike, thanks for being here. For what? We're doing this again? We're going back in again with more troops and more money and more?
Well, you know, combat is usually conducted in a thunderous expedition. This is a drizzle. I mean, 450 troops is really nothing, of which most of them are going to provide security for this base that's going to sit between Ramadi and Fallujah. So if you look at a map, it'll kind of separate two towns that are currently held by ISIS. And they're designed to get the Iraqi security forces to get moving, recruit them. You heard Ash Carter say yesterday there's not enough recruits. There's just not enough in the factory really to produce any kind of sizable environment.
We've been down this road before trying to train the Iraqis to defend their own country. Is there any reason to think that this relatively small infusion will actually do the trick this time?
Well, this is really about training the Sunni tribes. We've discovered that you can't get an Iraqi Shia that lives in another part of Iraq to the Sunni lands there to fight for the country of Iraq in that location. So this is about taking the people that are currently in the Anbar province itself, getting them trained to fight ISIS, to eject them from Ramadi and Fallujah. Now, when ISIS leaves these towns, if they end up winning, let's say the Iraqi government, they end up destroying them completely. So this is not going to end well any way you look at it.
And of course the question, if ISIS moves out, or let's say we're somehow able to defeat ISIS, something is going to rise up and take its place, as seems to have always happened, particularly in this part of the country. Is once again we come back to the question of, can Iraqis stand up and defend their own ground?
Right. So the Sunnis, once they take these cities back, the question is, right, can they hold them? Again, it gets back to the Sunni tribes and where we should make the investment in right now. You have the Iraqi awakening that took place in 2007 when U.S. forces aligned with those Sunni tribesmen to defeat al-Qaeda. It's literally back to the future. It's the same thing all over again. But the question, once again, remains whether or not the Sunnis will believe the Shia-based government. Will they become part of it going forward?
It seems like the only time we've ever had success in that area, in a relatively small scope, is when we come in with overwhelming force, overwhelming numbers, and just simply overpower everything that's there. This doesn't seem like that. Or should we be looking at an all or nothing option, in your opinion?
Yeah, Andrew, that's the thing. I mean, that's a principle of war, as you just mentioned there, is mass and an overwhelming force. But you have a president right now that is completely committed to a zero body count. He is unwilling to have one American soldier killed in Iraq, at least I think for the rest of his administration. So,
is that a good thing?
Well, if you're an Iraqi person, it's not a good thing because things aren't going to move forward. Of course, it's a good thing. Look, nobody wants to see soldiers killed, but again, you do get strength in mass as well. And if you had that, but again, logistically, we couldn't do that. We couldn't send 10,000 troops. It would take us 6 months to do that. We've so much extracted our military and our logistical base out of Iraq right now. We would not be able to get back anytime soon.
And so we come back to the question if there's any political will in this country to do that.
But do what? You asked a question, which is, will the Iraqis stand up for themselves? The problem is there are no Iraqis. There are Sunnis and there are Shia. And that religious split has lasted 1,400 years. It is the defining characteristic of the Middle East. As you heard, the Shia will not go in and fight for the Sunnis. The Sunnis won't fight for the Shia. And if the president is saying, I'm not going to throw American lives into a religious war in a country created in 1919 by colonial powers, more power to the president.
Well, that sounds like you're going back to Joe Biden circa 2007 when he said he thought the future of Iraq was going to be 3 different countries, one for Sunnis, one for Shia, and one for Kurds.
That's what you now have.
Well, the thing is, you can't have 3 different countries because where the Sunnis are, there are no natural resources there. That wouldn't make a country. You have that where the Shia are and you have that where the Kurds are. So that's the issue. And that's what they recognize, is that it might not be 3 separate countries. Maybe it's a confederation, call it what you want, but the Sunnis need someone else.
You're absolutely right about that as a matter of rational intellect. Ask the Sunnis whether they want to be in a federation with the Shia and the Kurds. They don't.
Well, they have to eat and they have to defend themselves as well. And the other thing too is
our Probably.
Well, and you know, I do want to ask you that because I think that most Americans, this is 3 times tonight that I have agreed with him. What's in
You're
this
getting more
water?
mature.
A little, I'm maturing.
Yeah.
I venture to say, snap poll, if you will, most Americans do not care. Most Americans also fear that this is starting to look like the beginning of another Vietnam, where slowly you're pulled in. As a military man that's an expert, how do you react to that?
Well, so let's get back to the situation on the ground. Right now, it's tenable from the perspective that if the status quo remains, Baghdad defends itself, it just continues to go on. ISIS doesn't move much forward. We've contained it. So from a military perspective, it's contained. The problem is if ISIS gains more recruits and threatens Baghdad and then threatens Saudi Arabia. They threaten Saudi Arabia, they threaten the oil, they threaten the ports. That's the issue here. That's why Americans have to be concerned. That's number one. Number two, the Kurds in the north, while they are the fighters here, and the change in strategy would be that, supporting them, you then upset the apple cart with Turkey and the Iranians who would have a problem with an independent Kurdistan.
Well, that begs the question, where's the rest of the Arab and the Muslim world in all of this, and should we be getting involved when they're not?
That's been a problem since the 1900s, the early 1900s, and the end of the Second World War. They recognize that this is a game, some from their perspective, that if they show any weakness or show one side or the other strength, then they have to move and do something at that point. So it becomes this game of who's going to act first, and they always let the Americans act first.
One day, I promise, you're going to come here with happy news, with good news, and we're all going to leave feeling much better. Apparently, it's not tonight. We're going to take a quick break here on RFL. When we come back, we're going to explain why Brian Williams and Alexander Hamilton have a lot in common.